Think about the last website you visited. You most likely saw something like a navigation list. You saw maybe a list of social icons. You may have even seen a list of related posts in a blog post and a list of different share links. And you might think that, oh, these are complex things to build. But in reality, they are quite easy to build, and under the hood, they all have similar patterns. So that's what we're going to be exploring in today's video. In our daily lives, we use lists for a lot of things. For example, when you go grocery shopping, you typically go with a list of items that you want to buy. Otherwise, you might end up buying too much or too little. Same thing with our daily tasks. When you're trying to prepare yourself for your tasks, you tend to write a list of to-dos. In our school system, the teachers tend to rank their students based on a list. So we say first position, second position, and so on. So that's how we use lists for so many different things. And a list at its core is simply a sequence of items which are grouped together for a specific reason. For example, we have to do or a grocery list. So it has a specific reason and then it has a sequence. So those two things are the key to forming a list. So now, before we dive into lists in web design, I have a quick question for you and I would like to know your answers in the comments. The question is, how many types of lists do we actually have in modern HTML? It turns out that there are actually 3 types of lists you need to master in web design. First, we have the unordered list, and this is the most common type. It is used when the sequence of the items doesn't actually matter. So for example, let's say we have a list of ingredients. The way we list the ingredient doesn't actually matter. You can put anyone as the first item, anyone at the second, and so on. The order does not matter. We see that popularly used in things like list of testimonials. The order in which the testimonials are arranged doesn't matter. Our navigation list is a sequence of items, but the order doesn't matter. The other type of list that we have is the ordered list. And this is used when we now care about the sequence. This is typically used when we are writing steps of items. So for example, in our recipe blog, we have a list of directions. So how to prepare it. You start by doing A, then do B, then do C, and so on. So the order matters. Same thing when we're trying to rank items. So for example, let's say you say the top 10 cities in the world and you're trying to rank them. So once you're ranking them, that means the order matters. So you have to now use an ordered list. The third type of list, which is less common, is called the description list, and it is often overlooked. It is a specialized tool for key value pairs of the list items. And one place where we use them is in metadata. And what do I mean by metadata? So for example, let's say you have like the gov.uk website, which is my go-to website for thinking about accessibility. And you see in the website, we have a list of metadata related to the post. So who is the author? When was it published? This is where we tend to use the description lists. So let me right click and inspect so you can see it. If you inspect it, you see that we have the DL, DT, DD. This is how we define description lists. So those are the 3 kinds of lists, and we'll try to see how we incorporate them into our current web project. Coming back to our example website, in our last couple of videos, we tackled a few sections, which are the hero section as well as the our story section. In today's video, we're going a step further. We'll tackle the our menu section, the seasonal special section, the finder section, as well as the book a table section. So now let's jump right into it. So here we are in the Builderius editor. Like I mentioned in the last couple of videos, we are working on the HTML structure, not the styling. So now let's continue. I'll click on the main tag and we're adding our next section for the our menu. So I'll go ahead and add from the favorites toolbar on the right hand side, the section element, which comes with a container. I'll highlight the container. For that, I'll add a div. This div will house my heading and accompanying paragraph. I can also go ahead and convert that div into an age group. Then next, I'll go back to the container and we're going to be adding our section for the starters, the section for the main, and the section for the dessert. Okay, so I'll add a div, put a heading inside, and we are considering the list of the menu items as an unordered list because we're saying within our starters, we have a list of different recipe items. And those items, the order doesn't matter. So that's why we're using an unordered list. So let's go ahead and add it. So I've added my age group for my heading. Then within the container, I'm going to add a new div. And that div will contain a heading. And it will contain a list. So I'll go to my element inserter because we don't have it in the favorites panel. And I'll search for list. So I'll choose list. But instead of having to always go to the element inserter, I will add these items into my favorites panel because I use lists a lot. So I'll hover over the list. It will show you a star icon. Click on that star icon. It adds it to favorites. The list item as well. I'll add that to favorites. And now I can access them from the favorites toolbar. Okay, so let's go back to the favorites toolbar and I'll click on the list. So now we have our list. The wrapper for the list is a UL to show that it is an ordered list. So let's go ahead and populate all of these things with content so that it becomes more meaningful. So for the first heading, that is going to be a section heading. So that's an H2. And it's called our menu. Confirm the heading level. Then within the paragraph, we have some content, which I'll just copy and paste. Then the first heading is the status. And for that status, it is a subheading. Our menu was an H2. So since this is subheading, it's going to be an H3 following in order. H3. And now we'll go ahead and start adding the content to our list item. A list item is designated with an LI tag and it can contain any kind of information that is grouped into that item. So let's go back. We have decided that our menu item is the entire card. So this card is going to have some items again, which are like the heading, we have a price, we have a paragraph, and then we also have a list of allergens. So that's another list. And the list of allergens as well doesn't matter the sequence in which we add them. So that's going to be using another UL tag. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So this will be an H4, copy the item. So within our list, which is the UL, we have the list item. And then within that list item, let me delete the content. I'm going to be nesting some elements into the LI. So we're going to be nesting the heading. We'll add a paragraph, another paragraph for the description, and then we'll add another list within it. So that's a nested list. You can have a list within a list is allowed. Now let's populate all of these with content. So for the heading, I'll add the content. Make sure the heading level is in order. So we had the section was H2. The status subsection was an H3. Now for the title itself is going to be an H4 following in order. Okay, so an H4. Then for the price, we have this number. But just adding the number itself doesn't necessarily make sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a title before it so that you can understand what that number means. So I'll say price, colon, and then I'll put the value. Later, we're going to be using some CSS to hide the price tag, but just leave the actual number. If you want to add a space between the currency and the number, but you know that the currency and the number are always together, you can now use what you call a non-breaking space. And you do that by using the ampersand, then you put NBSP and then a semicolon, and that will create a space that is non-breaking. So it's basically connected but apart. Okay, so that's for the price. Then let's go to the description. I'll copy and I'll paste the content. So we have the main content added. Now let's go ahead and add the sub list. So for the sub list, I could also argue that it needs a heading. Just having a list, the user might not know what that list is all about. So you could technically add a heading and then put the list underneath the heading. So what I'll do is I'll now put another div to group my list and its heading. Because usually when you have a list, you should be able to have what is the title of that list. So what I'll do is I'll now put a div to wrap the UL. So let's go ahead and on the li, I'll add a div which will wrap my UL. And then in that div, I'll add a heading which will come before the UL. For that heading, I would say it is the allergens. And that will be maybe an H5. So continue down the list on H5. So the first allergen is crustacean. The next one is gluten. And I'll add the last one. Let me go ahead and duplicate the li. And I'll add my item. Okay, so now we've added our first starter item. So what I'm just going to do is duplicate it a couple of times, then duplicate the section for the starter that would then be replicated as the main and as the dinner. Okay, so I've finished adding all of the items. Now let's proceed to the next section. So I'll highlight the main tag and I'll add a new section element. Within that section element is going to be very similar with the age group. So let me just go ahead and duplicate the age group for my previous section and I'll drag it in. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see what section we're going to be tackling. So I'll go back to our example. So we've tackled our menu section. I'll skip some of the sections for now, and I'll go down to the book a table section. The reason I'm doing this is for the book a table, we have another list. So a list of the steps you to take to book a table. And now the steps are in order. You first of all have to choose your date and time. Then you can call us or email us. Then you would receive a notification. You don't receive a notification before making the call. So the order matters. So let's go ahead and tackle this section. So I'll go ahead and add the title. So instead of our menu, it's going to be book a table. And I'll add the accompanying text. Okay, so we have the first part done. Now we're going to be adding a list again, but this time it is the ordered list which uses the OL tag. So I'll highlight the container and then I'll add the list element and I'll convert it from a UL to an OL. With the ordered list, it has a bit more things we can do compared to the unordered list. I'll show you a few of them as we continue. So let's start. So let me go ahead and start adding the content. Similar to the unordered list, you can nest whatever HTML element you want. So within the list item, we have the heading, like choose your date, and then we have a description. Check our opening and so on. So let's go ahead and copy the choose a date. And I'll go to the first item, remove the content, and add a nested element, which is the heading first and a paragraph. Since the preceding heading is the section heading and it has an H2, so this will now be an H3. And I'll add my content, add the description, and I have my content there. Since the structure is going to be the same, I'm just going to duplicate this a couple of times. So I'll delete the other li that was added, and I'll duplicate the li a couple of times. One thing you'll notice immediately is that with the OL, it automatically adds a numbering system. And with that numbering system, there are a few things we can do with the numbers. We can change the actual numbers that are there. We can change the starting number. We can change the order of the numbering. So many things we can do with those numbers, which is why the OL tag is a bit more involved. It has a bit more things we can do with it. Before we continue, I'll just go ahead and quickly paste all of the items so that we don't have to waste our time, and then we'll continue. Okay, now that I've finished adding the items, what are some of the things you can do with the ordered list? Let me go back to the OL tag, and in Builderius, if you look at the element settings under the content tab, you will notice that there are a few options that you can do with the ordered list. Most of it is targeted at the actual numbers. You can see right now it starts from number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. You can choose where you want the numbers to actually start from. So if I say I don't want it to be number 1, I want it to start from number 2. You see that now it says 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. If I say I want to start it from number 7, you can see 7. Let's preview it. You see it now says 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. So you can choose where the number starts from. You can also choose other things like, do you want to reverse the numbering? Because, for example, say you want to start from the list to the highest. So all you have to do is just toggle on reversed, and it basically reverse the numbering for you, starting from number 4 to number 1. You can also choose how you want the numbering to be. Do you want it to be in the regular 1, 2, 3 numbers, or you want it to be I, and so on? So you can choose that as well. So many things you can do with the ordered list. So that's it for the ordered list. Let's go back and make sure it is starting from number 1 and it is not reversed. Okay, so we're done with the ordered list. The last section we'll tackle today is coming back to the Find Us section. And that will bring us to the other type of list, which is rarely used, and that is the description list. So now, looking at these opening hours, one thing you will notice is the pattern that we have the day and then the time. So you see, Monday, what is the time? It's closed. Tuesday to Thursday, what is the timing? It is 12 noon to 2:30 p.m. Friday to Saturday is the day, and then there is a time. So it's kind of like a key value pair. You have the term, which is the Monday, and then you have its description, which is the timing. So we can think of this as a description list. You could also think of it as an unordered list. So it all depends on how you see it. But this is a good example of when you can use a description list. So I'll go back to the builder, and then I'm going to add a new section element. So I'll highlight the main tag, add a section element, and within that section, same thing, I'll add the age group. So duplicate that, and I'll paste it into my section. And then I'll go ahead and I'll add a new div to wrap first content and second content. Okay. So for that, I'll just add a div. Within that div, I'll add 2 extra divs. Within the first div, we have a heading for opening hours, and then we have our description list. Okay, so let's tackle that. So I'll come back within the div, I'll add a heading, and that heading is going to be called opening hours. It's going to be an H3. The main heading itself is supposed to be Find Us. And okay, we don't have any tagline for it, so I might as well just delete the tagline, but I'll do that later. And then I'll just make it just a simple heading, but you can do that on your own. So that heading is going to be H2, and then the opening hours is H3. And then underneath the opening hours, within the div, I'm going to add another type of list. So first I can start with a list element. Then I'll convert it from a UL to a DL. That is a description list. Okay. Now, the syntax for description lists is that we use DL as the wrapper. So we have DL to wrap everything. And then for each key value pair, the key, we use DT, so that is the description term. And then we have DD, which is the description definition. So let's go ahead and apply that in our work. So instead of an LI, I'll convert it to a DT and a DD. And now we can start styling them. So the DT is Monday and the DD is going to be closed. One thing that is allowed in the description list is that we can wrap our DT and DD in a div. That is only within the description list. Within your other types of lists like your UL or OL, you cannot wrap the LI inside of a div. The LI must be the parent that is a direct child of the UL. But within the description list, you can have a DL, then a div, which now wraps your DT and DD. Okay, so within this DL, I'm now going to put in my div. The purpose is I want to use it for styling. So I want to be able to style the groups of DTs and DDs together as one group. So that's the first item. I can now go ahead and duplicate this a couple of times. For the next one is going to be for Tuesday to Thursday. You can now also choose, do you want to break up the times into separate DDs? Because you're allowed to have each term having multiple descriptions. As you can see from the example in the MDN docs, you can have multiple terms, multiple descriptions. You can have single term that has multiple descriptions where you have one DT but with multiple DDs and so on. So it all now depends on how you want to tackle the definition. Do you want to say Tuesday to Thursday as the key and then each date range as a DD, but then you now style it using CSS? So all of these things, sometimes you have to take them into consideration of how you want to approach it. For now, we're just going to approach it as a single element for everything. And you can do that for the rest of the content. One fun fact is that when you're trying to show like ranges, so date range, time range, and things like that, you use an N dash. So that is EN dash. I know in this era of AI, people are always afraid to use dashes that are not the standard dash. It makes it feel like your content is written with AI, but it's just fun to know that there are different types of dashes. There's the M dash, N dash, the hyphens, and so on. So that's beside the point. But yeah, that's how you tackle the Find Us section. With the contact and location, it's just a simple paragraph. So you just use a paragraph text. You can use some BR tags to break them up into different lines. You might be tempted to use the address tag here because it's an address tag, but the address tag is usually meant for an address of the current page or the current content. It's not just a general address. So yeah, but there are so many different HTML tags. And yeah, not to bore you too much, but that's how we'll write our content, just by looking at the HTML definition and think about how we'd prefer to approach it. Rather than even using a description list, sometimes it might call for you to use a table. So the same information, let's see how we can present it as a table. If you wanted to present the opening hours as a table rather than as a list, what you do is, let me go over to the second div, and you simply go to the elements inserter and insert a table element. And we have our table element. All you have to do is now just fill in the information. So I can say the first one should be my day, and the second part should be the time. Then I can delete the third one. The way the whole table works is first you'll have a table element, then you have what you call the T head and T body. So you have T head, which will now wrap all of your header content. So we have the day and the time header content. Then within that, each row of content, we have to wrap it in a TR element. TR means each row of a table. And then TD means each cell in the table, so each column in the table. So that's how you have to do it. So now, since we are deleting one column, we have to do that on each row item. So I'll delete that element. Make sure there are only two. So now we have two items. And all you have to then do is just fill it with your content. That's it. So I can say first one is Monday. And the Monday is closed. We just leave them separately if you want. So you can say next one is Tuesday. And you fill the content. Wednesday, you fill the content. Thursday. So yeah, that's all you need to know about lists and tables. I hope you've learned something. Did you get it right when I asked how many types of lists we have in HTML? If you did, thumbs up to you. And by speaking of thumbs up, remember to give a thumbs up to the video as well, so that it can reach out to more people. And yeah, when you look at the next website, you'll be able to start seeing all of these patterns, that the patterns are used everywhere. When we have a sequence of elements, you can present them as a list, either ordered list, unordered list, a description list, or maybe even in a table format. All depends. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.